So back in January, I did an article out of this book, which is called External Theories of Empirical Knowledge by Laurence BonJour. This is just a great book on epistemology in general because it has two big writings by one by Laurence BonJour, the other by Ernest Sosa. Hopefully I'll get to the ones by Sosa, but back January I posted it in March, but I did it in January. I need to post things more quicker. I did the external accounts of justification, and in this video I'm going to be doing the article called In Search of Coherentism. This article is mostly BonJour going and surveying pure accounts of coherentism, looking at the coherence theories of empirical knowledge or empirical justification, looking at those, talking about all of its qualities, and then he goes over 6 general objections. So notebook here. Mostly in the 80s, BonJour wrote a book called Structures of Empirical Knowledge, and when he wrote that book was him formulating a coherence theory of empirical knowledge. So he was at one point a coherentist about knowledge and about justification. But since then he flip-flopped to he was a externalist and a coherentist, and he flip-flopped in other writings, including the writings he has in here, to being a internalist foundationalist. So in this work he goes over the things that are this theory, at least this theory in its pure forms, because you do have things like found herentism by people like Susan Hack, and you have coherentism, which is mixed with other theories, and you have other writings that are impure theories of coherentism, which do in fact work, but he's basically arguing that the pure accounts of coherentism about empirical justification do not work, and are very problematic, and there have been no real successful accounts of empirical knowledge or empirical justification that are purely coherentism, that are purely based on coherence. So what characterizes this, first off, is that there are no basic beliefs. A basic belief is something that we have a basic belief B, which does not require justification by itself, and it basically justifies itself and doesn't need a meta belief to justify it. And then we have belief C, the belief C1, C2, I should put 1 and 2, but those beliefs need justification outside of itself, and thus have this belief as their foundation. This belief as their foundation justifies them both. That's the general way that foundationalism works. That there is either there are basic beliefs within a system of knowledge or a system of beliefs. So coherentism does not use this. It thinks that nothing as such exists. And this here is kind of like a general, bad but general, I guess, picture of what a coherent system of beliefs would look like. And what this whole thing is that there are no basic beliefs. There's no hierarchy. In foundationalism, you'll have a hierarchy of beliefs. Ones that are foundational and ones that are discursive. When in a coherent system of beliefs, you have beliefs that are all on the same level, thus there is no hierarchy. And the whole thing, every belief is justified within here by relations of mutual support. And what he has used the word dovetailing, or fitting together, fitting together in nice little ways. And every belief in the system is justified by the way that each belief stands in relation to the others. So, coherence has a place in empirical justification, but it's not the whole story. BonJour says that coherence is not the whole story. There are people like Sellers and Quine and Duhem in philosophy science and epistemology. Keith Lair as well. I think I don't know if he's entirely pure coherentist though. There are people who argue pure coherentism as being the whole story of empirical justification, but he shows in this article that coherentism is not the whole story, and that there are other things that are required to have a successful theory of empirical justification. So basically, he's going to show all these things, and then he's going to give you 6 objections as to why this is a very unstable and problematic theory. One big problem is that coherence requires no input from the outside world. It's purely conceptual, and there's nothing here that is extra conceptual. Coherence of beliefs doesn't make them true. Thus, the coherence of a system does not confer truth. While if you can uphold a successful theory of foundationalism, there is something in that can in a way confer truth. There are problems with foundationalism as well. I would say that there's not as much problems in foundationalism as there is in coherentism, but he's asking the question is, how can coherence be the basis for epistemic or empirical justification? One big thing here is that coherentism is a form of justification that is non-linear. A linear form of justification would be foundationalism or infinitism, where it does go in a line. This is non-linear in that it can be a circle or a square, whatever shape you want it to be, but it's not linear. It's everything. There's no hierarchy. It's all a big system, and everything fits together, and that's how each of these beliefs is justified, because of how they stand in relation to each other. Coherentism, in a way, can be holistic too. The circles must be large enough to have to be a primary unit of justification. So nonlinear or holistic system doesn't mean that a system that stands or falls together. That means that one thing's coherence undermined by an incoherence in a totally unrelated area. It doesn't mean that that's basically extreme holism is that in a subject area, say nuclear physics, we have coherence. The coherence in a system of beliefs that is about nuclear physics isn't going to be undermined by a serious incoherence in a system of beliefs which is about philosophy or about medical ethics or some other area. That's extreme holism. There is holism here, and what holism is that no belief here is going to be tried to be charged for its justification without taking the whole thing as a system. You cannot. Basically, a lot of foundationalist thinkers, people like Schlick or Carnap in the positivist era, at least, would try to take one belief and try to account for its justification by itself and try to isolate it. Holism is the one that is against that, saying that if you're going to try to justify this belief, you have to take into account the whole thing. And Quine was one of those people who had his web of belief. Duham in philosophy of science was another. So that's one big thing. We have this whole thing is nonlinear and it's holistic. If this gets large enough, it can be a primary unit of justification, which can be groups of interrelated beliefs, high degrees of inferential interconnectedness, where most of this is inferential until we talk about stuff like that, cognitively spontaneous beliefs. And we also have the issue that this is, or the whole thing, that these are all stand in relations of mutual support. And this is all the big whole thing. One of the big things when we think about coherentism is we think about all these beliefs stand. All these beliefs relate to each other in explanatory relations, logical and explanatory relations. That how these beliefs stand together. That's how all of these things are explained and justified. So what is also thought here is that to have a coherent system of beliefs, that you have to have logical consistency. That is not the case according to BonJour, who says that consistency, logical consistency is basically the thing that if a system is consistent, you can't have one of these beliefs being false while the others are true, or everything is the same truth value. A coherent system doesn't have to be consistent according to BonJour. Coherence doesn't even need that, because basically if you're going to have a coherent system of beliefs, you're going to have a lot of error. And you're trying to get somewhere. You're trying to get somewhere, in some form. And according to people like Quine, you're not always going to have to. According to people like Quine, you're not going to have a unshakable foundation of knowledge, which can help you keep everything consistent. So if you're going to stick with coherentism, you're going to have a lot of error. Therefore, you don't need the whole system to be consistent to have a coherent system. Coherence, for everything here to cohere, they must dovetail. They must fit together. There must be high degrees of inferential interconnectedness. Coherence requires we have relations of necessitation and probabilistic connections. Probabilistic connections meaning having to do with probability. Explanatory relations are the basis of coherence. It is impossible to give a prima facie true. It's not really easy to have a coherent system that is prima facie true. That's a difficult thing. BonJour says that coherentism is a promissory note and not a developed theory of empirical justification. It's a promissory note, and it's not a fully developed theory. There are other theories out there that do have a way towards knowledge or a way towards just a way towards justification, at least, that is a stable one that can do some good, while this one, according to BonJour, doesn't really have that. Now we get into the very big problem. One of the main problems that cripples coherentism is the problem of accounting for observation. Basically, if you have a coherent system of beliefs where you have no basic beliefs, you have basically this system which is a bunch of beliefs. You don't need input from the outside world. You don't need anything that is extra conceptual. You can have a coherent system of beliefs about pink unicorns and pink rhinos, which don't even exist. But as long as you have a system of beliefs about pink unicorns and about pink rhinos that coheres and has all these things that work for it within that system, you have a coherent system of beliefs, and that, according to many, that would mean that you would have some form of justification. That's a big problem because that's we're going to get to this one and lots of issues in here. So basically, to have a coherent system of beliefs, you don't need observational data from the outside world. Sense observation, sense perception, sense data. It plays a enormous role in empirical justification. In fact, it is an integral role, huge role. To have empirical justification, most would say that you need to have something that has to do with observational data, something that we see, something that we have perceived, which can factor into whatever system of beliefs that we have, whatever structure it is. Viable coherence theories must account for observational data. Now, basically, what BonJour is doing here is he's basically showing the coherentist all the options that he has, and basically telling the coherentist all the problems he needs to solve to have a viable coherence theory. Observational beliefs are arrived at non-inferentially. Basically, if I just see a cup sitting on the table, I didn't arrive at the belief that there's a cup sitting on the table. Thus, we have the whole dichotomy between non-inferential and inferential beliefs. A non-inferential beliefs is I see the cup on the table, observational data, which leads to a non-inferential belief. I see the cup on the table, which is perception, thus leads to a non-inferential belief. I have chained all over the floor and it's getting on my feet. So you have to account, if you're going to be a coherentist, you have to account for this kind of observational data. You have to account for that. You have to show how that plays a role in here. Otherwise, your coherence theory doesn't really do anything for helping empirical justification. You're just going to have a bunch of coherent systems about things that don't exist and things that make no sense. But as long as they cohere, you're all good. But you have to account for observation if you're going to have a viable theory of coherence that does some help for empirical justification and knowledge. So observational beliefs are arrived at non-inferentially and are causally resulting from sense experience. Observational beliefs must cohere with a background set of beliefs. So you have to have, a belief that contains observational data somewhere in here, and you have to have that belief cohere with your background system. or your background set of beliefs. Justification depends on the way belief was arrived at. So we're not, well, and I'm thinking here, I've been thinking here that if you're going to have a successful theory of coherentism having to do with justification and knowledge, you're going to have to be a externalist. And I have videos about both of these theories, externalism and internalism. I have videos about both of those things. If you just go into my epistemology playlist, you will find those. And basically, externalism says that you get to your beliefs, or that the justification of your beliefs comes from the way that you arrived at them. Thus, we have people like Goldman, Greco, Zebski, and at one point BonJour, I think, did have a theory like that. There are many others too. Thus, process. We have the whole theory of reliabilism, process reliabilism, virtue reliabilism. So you have to basically, if you're going to have and internalism deals with that you have access to your justification of your beliefs, which is how you get that, or you have certain mental states that do justify your beliefs. So what I would think is that if you are a coherentist and you want to have a viable theory, you would have to be this one. It would be very hard for you to be a coherentist while also being a internalist, in my personal opinion. So BonJour, when he wrote his book in the 80s, The Structure of Empirical Knowledge, when he was a coherentist, he tried to account for observation using cognitively spontaneous beliefs. And what that is it accounts for observation by saying that there are beliefs that strikes the observer in a involuntary, coercive, and non-inferential way. So observational experience leads to observational belief. So basically a cognitively spontaneous belief, which I will refer to here as a CSB from now on, since I don't want to say that mouthful so much. Basically, that it is belief that strikes you. You didn't arrive at that belief. The belief was just there. And that is, in a way, how a lot of observation does work. Not all observation works that way, but some of it does. CSB, according to him, does not confer justification, even for observational beliefs. There's no reason to believe that CSBs are justifications. Because a CSB could be a hunch, it could be wishful thinking, it could be irrational spontaneous convictions. Wishful thinking is another big issue, which this could be. You could have a cognitively spontaneous belief, which would be wishful thinking. You could have CSBs that have nothing to do with the extra conceptual world. Certain CSBs can be justified within a system by appeal to three things: the fact of their spontaneous occurrence, 2, the relevant background conditions, and 3, the apparently successful track record with respect to frequency of truth in a certain subject matter. CSBs could account for observation within coherence, but it is not a successful coherentism. So you do have some potential here for having a viable account of coherentism, but according to BonJour, from what he has seen and what he has done, it's not enough. It's not enough to have a viable theory of coherentism that does lead to justification and does confer some truth. Two further requirements: one, that other beliefs needed to give a justifying reasoning for a particular observational belief must themselves be justified in a non-foundationalist way. So if you have this, you have to, other beliefs needed to give a justifying reason for one of these has to be justified itself somewhere within a system like that. Two, the bare possibility of coherentist observation is obviously insufficient to accommodate the role that observation intuitively plays in our cognitive lives, and do provide for genuine cognitive input from the non-conceptual world. The non-conceptual world being the world that we see, not beyond all this stuff that we just think about. So basically, this has been the best thing that coherentists have come up with to try to account for observation within their theory. But BonJour is basically saying these two requirements would be needed to make it adequate, and so far they haven't met these requirements, and I don't think that they ever will. So now we're going to go to the 6 objections that BonJour does give. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go to this one, which is the doxastic presumption. Again, BonJour did use what is called the doxastic presumption in his work, The Structure of Empirical Knowledge. What that is that the coherentist uses a comprehensive meta-belief or a set of meta-beliefs, and a meta-belief is just like these are, if you need this one to be basically a meta-belief is a belief that does justificatory work for another belief. That is what a meta-belief is. So the doxastic presumption is that there is a meta-belief that is comprehensive, or a set of meta-beliefs about a system. So you would have this system, and then about this system you would have C, which is a comprehensive meta-belief, which is about this system. Which is about the contents of the system. Requirements would be needed to make it adequate, and so far they haven't met these requirements, and I don't think that they ever will. So now we're going to go to the 6 objections that BonJour does give. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go to this one, which is the doxastic presumption. Again, BonJour did use what is called the doxastic presumption in his work, The Structure of Empirical Knowledge. What that is that the coherentist uses a comprehensive meta-belief or a set of meta-beliefs, and a meta-belief is just like these are, if you need this one to be basically a meta-belief is a belief that does justificatory work for another belief. That is what a meta-belief is. So the doxastic presumption is that there is a meta-belief that is comprehensive, or a set of meta-beliefs about a system. So you would have this system, and then about this system you would have C, which is a comprehensive meta-belief, which is about this system. Which is about the contents of the system. And the the doxastic presumption is saying that we're going to have this meta belief or a set of meta beliefs which is about the content of the system, and we're going to be fine with this with this being unjustified. We're going to be fine with, well, not fine with. We're going to say for the time being that this being or that this belief is currently unjustified, and we're just going to deal with that for now and let this be that way for now. So BonJour said that that this move is a desperate move, and this is the best way to handle the issue as to how you're going to, I guess, justify having having the whole system. So the problem is that that we need access to beliefs where coherence to be assessed. We need to assess the coherence. We need to assess, and we need to basically evaluate the coherence of the whole system, and we need to evaluate what the system does as a whole, what justificatory work this whole thing does, and the doxastic presumption is a way of solving that problem. That's kind of the only way. That's the only way to solve it, leaving this belief as unjustified. Basically, BonJour says that this is a problem because this leads to skepticism, a form of skepticism. And even though that there is going to be some form of skepticism within epistemology, this leads to too much skepticism within a theory which is claiming to lead toward empirical, which is claiming to lead toward this empirical justification. Having done with the DP, we'll go to the input objection, or the isolation problem, which account for justification that depends entirely on coherence will have the absurd consequence that contingent, seemingly empirical beliefs might be justified without informational input from the extra conceptual world they attempt to describe. Thus, truth here is an accident in relation to the world. So, given this, you could have some beliefs that are like this, or in some other way, that are seemingly empirical, and thus you could believe them as empirical. And if they seem contingent, if they seem informational, if they seem empirical, if you have the system based on coherence, you could look at beliefs that are like that and think of them as justified. And if that belief is true, that's just a pure accident. To the alternate coherent systems, given a demanding concept of coherence, there will still be indefinitely many different possible systems of beliefs in relation to any given subject area, each as internally coherent as others. So, if you have a concept of coherence, which is basically the only thing that you're using as the measuring of justification, basically you can't just have coherence as your main thing that measures justification of a belief or the system. Because if you just have that, then you could have any other system which you could put in place here, given a subject area like physics. You could just put any other system in here, and it would be equally as coherent as the next. Third would have the problem of meta justification. This problem is that challenges the coherentist to give a reason as to why coherence leads to truth. This is just like saying to the coherentist, why do you think that having just a mere coherent system leads to any notion of truth? And this leads to coherence, to people who have coherence theories of knowledge to formulate coherence theories of truth, which also don't entirely work. Did that one. Now the fifth one is about observational input, which this is basically the main problem. Same problem with this, and that's kind of the main fundamental problem with this whole thing, as to how are you going to account for observation, how are you going to get beyond just having this whole thing as coherence. If you just look as this as having coherence, you're not going to come towards this at all. You're not going to come towards empirical justification at all if you're just going to measure systems by their coherence, which means you don't have any observational beliefs. So that's kind of like the main thing that a lot of these things boil down to, is how is a coherence theory going to account for observation. So this whole thing is that it's this is about how are you going to account for observational input. The coherentist gets out of this by playing the externalist card, by saying that we account for observation by saying that we come across observation and we justify observation via a external requirement, whether they're going to go the process or the virtue or whatever, they're going to use this. Sixth and finally, the coherence sustained over time. Mainly that a coherence theorist has very little chance of having a coherent system that is sustained over a period of time. This problem, or this objection, is that if you're going to have a viable, successful coherence theory, then you have to have a coherent system that is successful over a certain period of time, or over a certain long period of time, and is sustained, and it is kept that way, and does work, consistently. So, in my opinion, all of these do kind of boil down to observation. The input problem, this one having the issue of seemingly empirical and contingent beliefs seemingly empirical end up being justified when they are not as such, and that's boils down to this. Alternate coherent systems. I think that also boils down to this. This also boils down to this. Doxastic presumption. Yeah, kinda. This definitely does. And so does that. So I think that all the problems that the coherence theory of knowledge has boils down to accounting for observation when you have a pure theory of coherence about knowledge and justification. So I think what's left in this book is I'm gonna probably do his foundationalist theory, BonJour-In's, and I'll probably do Sosa's thought on virtue epistemology. So if you think I messed something up or left something out, comment below. Let me know. Thank you.